at a glittering Manhattan gala. Pregnant Elena Hartwell is humiliated by her husband's mistress while the cameras watch. But when betrayal tries to break her, Elena turns pain into power and discovers that forgiveness is not surrender, but freedom. This story reminds us, storms can expose the truth and rebuild the soul. If Elena's journey touched your heart, please support the channel with one like and one share so we can keep telling meaningful stories. Thanks for watching.
The ballroom shimmered with crystal lights, laughter, and the faint scent of champagne. Reporters swarmed like a storm as Manhattan elite gathered for the Langston Foundation Gala. Among them stood Elena Hartwell, 6 months pregnant. In a midnight blue gown she designed herself. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bag. She hadn't wanted to come, but her husband, Eric Langston, insisted. He said it would help their image. Now she realized he meant his. Across the marble floor, Eric was laughing, his hand resting too comfortably on the back of Vanessa Cole, his assistant and rumored protégée. The woman glittered in scarlet silk. Her lips curled into a smile when she spotted Elena. It wasn't polite, it was the smile of victory. Elena's breath caught. The room hushed as Vanessa whispered to Eric. He hesitated, then stepped aside, letting Vanessa glide toward his wife like a predator sensing weakness. "Well," Vanessa purred loud enough for guests to hear, "I didn't expect you tonight. Brave, considering how fragile you look. I am fine." Elena replied softly, "Please step aside." But Vanessa leaned in, her perfume cutting through the air. "You should have stayed home, sweetheart. No one wants a scene unless you are begging for him back." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Elena felt her chest tighten as the baby stirred. She turned to leave. Suddenly, Vanessa's hand shot out, grabbing the delicate fabric of her dress. "Oops," Vanessa said, tugging sharply. The silk ripped, silencing the ballroom. The tear went from her waist to the floor, exposing her baby bump under the harsh lights. Gasps filled the room. Elena staggered back, covering herself with shaking hands, face burning with shame. How could you?" she whispered. Eric didn't move. His eyes darted toward the cameras and the investors watching. His voice was cold and detached. "Vanessa, that is enough." But it wasn't. Vanessa smirked. "She is faking it, Eric. Everyone knows she trapped you with a fake pregnancy." Elena's vision blurred. Someone laughed. A voice murmured, "Scandal!" The room began to spin. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She could barely breathe. Then a chair scraped. A low voice sliced through the chaos. Calm, commanding, furious. Enough. Every head turned. At the center table, a tall man stood, dark suit, eyes like storm clouds, power radiating from him. Ethan Hartwell, the youngest of the Hartwell brothers, stepped forward, his voice echoing through the hall. "Who gave you the right to humiliate a pregnant woman?" The music stopped. Photographers lowered their cameras. Vanessa froze, turning pale. In that breathless silence, everyone realized the real story of the night had just begun. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. The orchestra was silent, glasses frozen halfway to lips. Elena could only hear the furious beating of her own heart, the man who had spoken tall, broad-shouldered. In a suit of quiet authority was someone she only saw in magazines. Ethan Hartwell, son of the Hartwell Group CEO. His family didn't just fund this gala. They owned half the companies inside it. He walked toward her, every step echoing on the marble. The crowd parted like he was parting the sea. Vanessa's smirk faltered, her voice trembling. "Mr. Hartwell, this isn't your..." But Ethan didn't even look at her. He stopped in front of Elena, removed his jacket, and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. His voice was low and controlled, yet reached every corner. "Whoever you are," he said, eyes locked on Vanessa. "You have crossed a line no decent person would cross." Vanessa stuttered. "I did not mean..." "You meant every word." Ethan cut her off. Tone calm but lethal. "You thought power could protect you. Not tonight." The photographers, sensing a massive story, began snapping again. Eric, face pale, finally stepped forward. "Ethan, this is a misunderstanding. My wife. Your wife." Ethan turned sharply, his stare slicing through him. "That is your wife you let someone assault in public." A whisper swept through the crowd like a wildfire. Investors shifted uneasily. Even the hotel manager stood frozen near the stage. Ethan turned back to Elena. "Can you stand?" She nodded weakly, gripping his arm for balance. The warmth of his hand steadied her, but her knees nearly gave out. "I just need a minute," she whispered, her breath uneven. "You are leaving," he said, firm but gentle. "You do not owe these people another second." Security guards appeared at his silent gesture. The crowd parted as he led Elena toward the exit. Someone muttered, "He is defending her." Another voice hissed, "That is Arthur Hartwell's son. Do not interfere." As they reached the door, Elena stopped. Sharp pain gripped her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. Color drained from her face. Ethan turned immediately, catching her before she could fall. "Call an ambulance," he ordered, his voice urgent now. Eric froze. "Elena," he began. But Ethan shot him a glare that could cut glass. "Stay where you are. You have done enough." Elena's vision blurred. She heard shouting, heels clattering, the rush of panic. Ethan's voice was the only one that broke through, calm and deep near her ear. "I have got you. Just breathe." Her fingers clutched his sleeve as darkness crept in. Somewhere, someone cried out, "She is bleeding." Ethan lifted her effortlessly, carrying her out as photographers scrambled for the shot. The billionaire heir cradling a blood-stained pregnant woman. Flash after flash lit the hall like lightning. Outside, the cold night air hit his face. Sirens wailed in the distance. He laid her gently in his car while his driver sped ahead to clear the route. "Stay with me," Ethan said, gripping her hand as her eyes fluttered open. "You are safe now, I promise." Tears slid down Elena's cheeks. "Why are you helping me?" She murmured faintly. "Because," he said softly, glancing at the small silver bracelet on her wrist with a faint H. "Some things cannot be ignored." As the ambulance door slammed, Ethan stared at the bracelet, his family crest, and whispered, "How could she possibly have that?" When Elena opened her eyes, everything was white. The walls, the sheets, the flowers on the table. A heart monitor beeped softly. She blinked, disoriented. Her throat was dry, her body heavy. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then the pain in her abdomen reminded her. The gala, the fall, the blood. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach. "My baby," she whispered. "You are both safe." The voice was deep and calm. She turned her head. Sitting near the window, sleeves rolled up, was Ethan Hartwell. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held quiet concern that made her chest tighten. "You passed out from blood loss," he said gently. "The doctors stabilized you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I do not even know you," she whispered. "Why help me like that?" Ethan leaned forward, resting elbows on his knees. "Because no one else did," he said simply, and because his eyes drifted toward the silver bracelet. "That is a Hartwell crest. It is not something you buy in a store." Elena frowned, confused. "It was my mother's. She said it was a gift from an old friend before I was born." He nodded slowly, something shifting behind his calm exterior. "That is interesting." Before she could ask, the door opened. A nurse walked in, followed by Ethan's older brother, Adrian Hartwell. His presence filled the room with quiet power. "How is she?" Adrian asked. "Recovering," Ethan replied. "The baby is fine." Adrian approached the bed, offering a polite nod. "Mrs. Langston, you were lucky tonight. The fall could have killed you and the child. We have arranged for private care and security. The press is already outside." "The press?" she echoed weakly. "They know about the incident," Adrian said. "The photos from the gala are everywhere. The Langston group is trending for all the wrong reasons." Elena's chest tightened. "Oh, God," she covered her face. "He will hate me even more." Ethan's voice cut through her panic. "No one will touch you. Not your husband, not his mistress, not the press. You will rest here until you are strong enough." She shook her head. "I cannot stay. I cannot afford this. You can." Adrian said smoothly. "The Hartwell Foundation owns this hospital. Your bills are covered." "I did not ask for charity," she said, voice trembling. "And we are not offering charity." He nodded to Ethan, then left as quietly as he came. Elena turned to Ethan, confusion clouding her features. "Why do I feel like you are not telling me something?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because I am not sure what it means yet. But that bracelet," his gaze softened, "it belongs to my family. My brothers and I each have one. Only 5 were ever made." Her pulse quickened. "That is impossible." "Maybe," he said, standing up. "Maybe not. Rest. Elena, we will talk in the morning." As the door closed behind him, she lay staring at the bracelet, the engraved H glinting under the light. Her heart pounded with questions she did not dare ask. Ethan handed the photo to Adrian. "Run the test. I need the truth." Rain battered the glass. Elena traced an old picture of Eric. Once. He was her future now. He was the reason her world fell apart. 2 years ago, they met at a charity gala. He was charming, confident. That smile hooked her instantly. She was a young designer, nervous about her first big project. He clapped when no one else would. "You have vision," he whispered. "And you have sincerity, a rare thing in this city," she laughed. Little did she know that very honesty would be the weapon that broke her. Eric Langston was royalty, and his father owned the biggest construction empire in New York. Elena won a contract with them. Late nights turned into coffee, then long drives where he spoke of destiny. He loved how she saw beauty in broken things like they deserved a second chance. She fell for the lie. 6 months later, he proposed in the unfinished penthouse she designed. He knelt in the concrete dust. "This will be ours," he promised. But the building stayed unfinished. After the wedding, he went cold. Late nights became vanishings. The warmth turned into a polite, icy distance. When she told him she was pregnant, he didn't even touch her. "It was unexpected," he muttered. Soon he smelled like another woman's perfume. The whispers started, rumors of his assistant, Vanessa. When Elena confronted him, he didn't blink. "You are imagining things," he snapped, cold as ice. "You are too emotional." Then she found the lipstick and the text. "See you at the gala, my love." Wear red. She clutched her phone in the bathroom, shaking. She stayed for the baby now. Lying in a hospital bed, those memories burned. She felt alone, terrified, and betrayed. The baby kicked. A soft knock. Ethan walked in with tea. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Elena wiped her red eyes. "I keep thinking about the man I thought I married." Ethan set the tea down. "Sometimes the people who break us are the ones who smile the most." Elena looked up. "You sound like you know." Ethan paused, a shadow of pain on his face. "Maybe. Get some rest." "Tomorrow everything changes," he said. Elena lay there, shivering. The morning light crept in, but her mind was stuck in that dark night. The screams, the tearing dress, Vanessa's cruel smirk. Elena closed her eyes, but the scene played on a loop. The door creaked. Ethan arrived, jaw set. "You need to see this." He clicked on the television. The news was already live. "Langston Gala Scandal," the headline read. "Pregnant wife attacked by husband's mistress." Footage showed Elena on the floor, gown torn. Vanessa laughing, and Ethan finally pulling her away. Elena gasped, "No, please." Ethan muted the sound. "It is everywhere. Half the city is watching." Elena's voice cracked. "They will twist it. They will blame me." Ethan sat close, firm and calm. Let them talk. Truth needs no defense. But the internet was vicious. "Gold digger," they called her. Poor Eric. Elena buried her face in her hands. "They don't even know me." Ethan watched her. "People love a lie if it is more fun than the truth." Elena looked up, eyes glistening. "Did Eric say anything?" Ethan's face tightened. "His team called it an unfortunate misunderstanding." Elena felt sick. "He is protecting her." "Of course he is," Ethan said, his voice hard. "His stock is falling. He will say anything to save himself." A knock at the door. Marcus, Ethan's brother, walked in with a laptop. His eyes were cold. "I found it." Ethan stood up. "What?" Marcus spun the screen around. It was the raw, unedited security footage from the gala. It clearly showed Vanessa cornering Elena and ripping the dress while Eric watched. Doing nothing. They tried to scrub it from the system. Marcus explained. I recognized the PR manager's digital signature. Elena stared, trembling. They tried to erase it all. Marcus nodded. But we own the narrative now. I am sending this to real news outlets. Ethan looked at her. We have you covered. Stay here. Rest, Ethan commanded. As he left, the monitor beeped in time with her heart. Ethan leaned against the door. Brace yourself. When this goes public, everything changes. For you, for him, for everyone. Elena touched her bracelet. Change cannot be worse than this. Ethan's eyes softened. Do not be so sure. He leaned in, his voice a whisper. There is something about you that does not add up. This bracelet, the crest, it matters. Elena frowned. What are you saying? I think last night was a setup. Someone wanted you gone, and I am going to find out who. 2 days later, the hospital was a zoo. Reporters screamed her name. Elena looked in the mirror. A stranger looked back. Ethan walked in with an envelope. You are being discharged. My brother fixed it. You are coming with us. Elena blinked. Where? The Hartwell estate, he said. Adrian wants to see you. Elena froze. The mansion. Why? Ethan studied her face. We need to talk about that bracelet. And your mother. The drive to the valley was dead silent. Elena stared at the rolling hills. The Hartwell estate appeared a massive fortress of stone and glass. Guards opened the gates like she was royalty. She felt trapped. Adrian stood on the stairs, a man of immense quiet power. Welcome, he said. Call me Elena, she replied. He nodded. Come. They walked through halls filled with portraits, each marked with the same H as her bracelet. They reached a sunlit study. On the desk lay a DNA report and old photos. Elena's heart hammered. What is this? Adrian gestured for her to sit. Do not panic. We do not believe in accidents. That bracelet is not just jewelry. It is part of a set from my father. Only 5 exist, 4 for his sons and 1 for a daughter who vanished. Ethan looked at her. That one is yours. Elena shook her head. No, my mother was just a teacher. She barely knew any wealthy people. Adrian softened. She wasn't always a teacher. We found records showing she worked for our father as an interior consultant. A bracelet went missing then. She looked stunned. You think your father and my mother. We're not saying that. Adrian interrupted. We need the truth, which is why we ran a DNA test on your blood from the surgery. Elena stared, her heart hammering. You what? Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping. We had to be sure. The results came in today. Adrian opened the file and slid a paper toward her. It trembled in his hand. You are not our sister. You are not blood. But he hesitated. You were legally adopted by our father 28 years ago. It was kept off the records. Her breath hitched. The world tilted. That is impossible. It is true, Ethan said softly. You are a Hartwell by law, not by blood. Elena watched through a blur of tears. He knew about me. Adrian nodded once. He knew. For some reason he kept you hidden. She could not speak. The truth was heavy. Adopted by Arthur Hartwell, the billionaire mogul. Her mind spun. She spent her life fighting to be seen. Now she realized she belonged to power all along. Adrian gave her space before speaking. He wanted to protect you, or maybe himself. But our mother cannot know yet. She would not understand. That warning came far too late. The doors burst open. Eleanor Hartwell swept in, draped in elegance and ice. Her pearls gleamed against her black suit. I knew I would find you here, she said coldly. What is this woman doing in my home? Elena stood up. Mrs. Hartwell, I. Eleanor's gaze was a blade. You are why reporters camp at my gates. My son S. name is being dragged through scandal because of you, mother, Ethan said, stepping between them. That is enough. Enough. Eleanor's voice cracked. You bring her here after the shame she brought upon this family. Adrian sighed, rubbing his temples. Mother, please. This is not about the tabloids. Oh, I think it is, she snapped, turning to Elena. Do you know how many years I spent protecting this name? How much blood my husband spilled to keep us untouchable. And now some girl ruins it in one night. Stop it, Ethan S. voice thundered. You do not know who she is. Eleanor froze, shocked by his tone, and who is she? Adrian waited before answering. She is one of us. Color drained from Eleanor S.'s face. What did you say? She is the daughter father adopted 28 years ago. Ethan explained. We confirmed it today. Eleanor stared as if the air had been punched from her lungs. That is impossible. Arthur would have told me. He did not, Adrian said evenly. We have the proof. Her composure shattered. She stumbled back, gripping a chair. For the first time, the great Eleanor Hartwell looked fragile. He had no right, she whispered. After everything. After her. Ethan frowned. After who? Eleanor turned away, her voice trembling. Your father's first love, the woman who nearly destroyed this family before you were born. Her name was Isabella Moore. Elena S. breath caught. That was my mother's name. Silence filled the room. Eleanor covered her mouth. Dear God, she murmured. So it is true. Adrian spoke softly. You knew her. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears of bitter rage. She was my closest friend. She worked at the foundation, and all the while she was having an affair with my husband. Elena S.'s knees weakened. That cannot be true. Oh, it is true, Eleanor said, and now, decades later, the daughter of my husband's mistress stands in my house, wearing our crest. Ethan moved toward Elena, his voice steady. She did not ask for this. She did not even know. Eleanor S.'s gaze flickered before hardening again. Ignorance does not erase bloodlines. You are playing with fire, Ethan. He did not flinch. Maybe it is time we stopped pretending we are pure. Eleanor stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble. Elena sank into a chair, shaking. I did not want any of this. Ethan crouched, taking her trembling hands. You did not start this war, Elena, he said, but you are the one who has to end it. A storm rolled in, drenching the estate in rain. Thunder shook the house while Adrian watched from the window, phone to his ear. I do not care what it costs, he said quietly. Find every document, every call, and every payment from Langston Holdings in the last 6 months. He hung up and turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired. You have been at this since dawn. Adrian stayed at the window. We are not just protecting her, Ethan. We are protecting the family. If Eric Langston thought he could humiliate a woman carrying our father's legal name, he is a fool. Ethan frowned. You are calling her an heir. She is one, Adrian said. Adopted or not, the paperwork is legal. Father made sure of it. Ethan crossed the room. What happens when Mother challenges it? She will never accept Elena. Then she will lose. Adrian said coldly. I will make sure of that. The door opened and Marcus entered with a laptop. I have something. Ethan straightened. Tell us. Marcus hit play. Grainy footage appeared. Eric Langston shook hands with a familiar face at a dim restaurant. Vanessa Cole. She visited him the day before the gala. Marcus said. I traced a $50,000 transfer from her account to Langston right after that meeting. Ethan S.'s eyes narrowed. They staged it. Exactly. Marcus confirmed. They planned the public humiliation. Vanessa wanted to ruin Elena. Eric wanted to distance himself from the scandal before the board meeting. They figured one night of chaos would make her disappear. Adrian's jaw tightened. We cannot let this go. We will release the surveillance video. Let the world see who they really are. Ethan hesitated. You will turn Elena into a media circus again. She just started breathing normally. She is part of this now, Adrian said. The moment she walked into that gala, she became a target. Ethan shook his head. She is a human. Not a weapon, Marcus muttered. Tell that to the reporters. Ethan paced. There has to be another way. Maybe we confront Eric directly. Adrian interrupted. He will not talk. His lawyers already threatened to sue Elena for defamation if we leak the video. Ethan S. temper flared. He is unbelievable. Marcus clicked a key, pulling up a new file. There is more. Eric S. Company is laundering money through shell charities. Guess who approved those transfers? Vanessa. She is not just a mistress. She is a co-conspirator. The room went silent. Outside, lightning-illuminated portraits of ancestors who built empires and buried secrets just like this one. Finally, Adrian said, "We will expose them both. When we do, Elena S.'s name will be cleared permanently." Ethan stared at the rain-streaked glass. "You think clearing her name will fix her?" Adrian S.'s expression softened. "Maybe not, but it will give her a choice. To stop being a victim." A maid knocked, looking pale. "Miss Elena is asking for you," she told Ethan. "She is in the garden." Ethan did not hesitate. He grabbed his coat and ran. Rain soaked his clothes as he rushed down the steps. Through the mist, he saw her by the stone fountain, barefoot and trembling, clutching a crumpled letter. She looked up, her eyes hollow. "It is from Eric," she whispered. "He says if I do not drop everything, he will destroy what is left of me." Ethan took the note, his face turning to steel. "He is about to learn what happens when you threaten a Hartwell." Fog rolled in as the brothers gathered. Dozens of screens flickered on the walls. Financial news, talk shows, gossip feeds. Every channel shared the same headline: Langston Gala scandal, truth or trap. Ethan stood in the center, jaw clenched. "They are twisting it again," he muttered. "Look at this. Vanessa is playing the victim." Marcus brought up a live broadcast. Vanessa sat in the studio, crocodile tears glistening under perfect makeup. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said softly. "Elena was unstable. She attacked me first. I was just defending myself." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. Lies. Adrian remained cool. "Calm down." Truth hits harder than tears. Ethan turned to Marcus. "Footage ready." Marcus nodded. "Edited. Verified. Time-stamped. Vanessa ruining Elena's gown." Eric just standing there. "Once this airs, their pity party is over." Ethan exhaled. "Let's do it." Marcus sent the file to the media under the Hartwell seal. The video hit the airwaves within minutes. The backlash was brutal. Social media flipped, turning against Vanessa. The public now defended Elena, calling it an assault. Elena watched from the sofa, wrapped in a blanket. The news anchors repeating her name made her stomach turn. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I just wanted to disappear." Ethan crouched by her. "You don't get to disappear. You survived something most people only whisper about. You fought back. That matters." Before she could answer, Adrian entered, phone pressed to his ear. "We have a problem," he said sharply. "Langston's PR team is spinning it. They claim the video is doctored, and we are just using business leverage." Marcus cursed. "They are accusing us of faking evidence." "Exactly," Adrian said grimly. "And Eric already filed an injunction to stop the broadcasts." Elena hid her face in her hands. "He won't stop until he ruins me completely." Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. "Then we hit back harder." Adrian shot him a look. "Careful, little brother. A war between our families won't be easy to contain." "Maybe it is time the world saw the real Eric Langston," Ethan replied coldly. Marcus returned late that night, dripping from the rain. "We have proof," he said, dropping a flash drive. "Langston has been cooking his books for years. Charity fraud, tax evasion, everything. Vanessa signed half the deals." Adrian's eyes hardened. "That is enough to bury them." "Then do it," Ethan said. Adrian hesitated. "Releasing this means no turning back. It will destroy the company, the investors, and even innocent family members." Ethan's jaw tightened. He destroyed her without blinking. He deserves no mercy. The brothers exchanged tense glances. Finally, Adrian gave a slow nod. "Fine. We do it my way, legally. Marcus, send this to the Attorney General's office anonymously. No trails back to us." Elena looked between them, whispering, "You are risking everything for me." Ethan's gaze softened. "You are not why this started, Elena, but you might be the reason it ends." Thunder rumbled as Marcus hit send. The file uploaded. A moment later, Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown message. It read, "You don't know what you just did. Watch your backs." Lightning flashed as Ethan caught Elena's gaze. "It is not over," he said quietly. "It is just beginning." The next morning, the Hartwell estate felt heavy. Rain tapped against the glass like a ticking clock. Elena sat in the sunroom, watching the storm fade, her hand resting over her belly. The baby kicked, her only anchor in a world spinning out of control. Ethan entered with 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't eat breakfast," he said. "I had the chef make something light." "I am fine," she murmured, eyes distant. "You say that every time." He placed the cup down, leaning against the window. "You do not have to be strong all the time." She gave a tired smile. "If I stop being strong, I fall apart." Before he could answer, footsteps echoed. Marcus appeared, looking pale. "We have a situation." Ethan straightened. "What kind?" Marcus hesitated. "Security just spotted Vanessa Cole at the gate. She demands to see Elena, says it is urgent." Elena's chest tightened. "She came here. She is screaming for cameras and threatening to leak more stories," Marcus said. "If we throw her out, she will claim we are hiding something." Ethan's voice hardened. "I will handle it." He strode toward the foyer. Marcus followed closely. Outside, Vanessa stood under a black umbrella, flanked by reporters. Her red dress glistened in the drizzle like spilled wine. When she saw Ethan, she smirked. Finally, a Hartwell shows his face. "Thought you would hide behind those stone walls forever." Ethan's tone was icy. "You are trespassing. Leave. Not until I speak to her," Vanessa snapped. "Or do you want the press to hear your little family secrets?" Reporters pressed in, microphones raised like weapons. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You don't scare me, Vanessa." "Oh, I think I do," she purred. "I know things about your father and about her." She glanced toward the mansion. "You really think she is just some victim. You do not know half of it." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You are lying, maybe," Vanessa said with a shrug. "But lies travel faster than truth, and right now I own the narrative." Cameras clicked wildly. Ethan took a step forward, his voice low. "You are running out of time. Walk away before this gets worse." Vanessa leaned in, smiling like a viper. "You think you are untouchable. Hartwell, I know about the adoption. I know what your father did, and the world will know, too." Rain pelted the gravel. A car door opened. Elena stepped out, shawl around her shoulders, looking pale but steady. "You wanted to talk," she said softly. "Then talk to me." Vanessa froze in disbelief. "You should not be here. You look pathetic." Elena walked closer, her steps deliberate. "You hurt me. You humiliated me. You almost cost me my child. I am done being scared of you." Vanessa's smirk faltered. "You do not have the power to fight me." "Maybe not," Elena said, "but I have the truth." No one moved. Cameras zoomed in on the tension. Vanessa's expression cracked, rage flashing behind her smile. Ethan stepped beside Elena, his voice cutting through the chaos. "If you are so proud of your lies, Vanessa, let us tell the world everything, including who you really are." Color drained from her face. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted as camera flashes exploded. Vanessa's umbrella trembled in her grip. "What did you just say?" she hissed. Ethan's eyes were hard and unflinching. "You heard me. You built your lies on others' pain. But secrets have a way of coming home." Her face paled. "You don't know anything, don't I?" he said, his tone lethal. "Because I think Eric does." Vanessa panicked. She opened her mouth to respond, but Adrian's voice boomed from the gates. "Enough." The reporters turned as the eldest Hartwell brother approached, his suit immaculate. "This is private property. You have had your spectacle. Now leave before I have you arrested." Vanessa tried to argue, but Adrian's security team moved in, forcing her and the cameras back to the road. Ethan guided Elena inside. "You should not have come out," he murmured. "I could not hide any more," she whispered. "She would have twisted everything." Inside, the tension remained. Adrian followed them, looking grim. "That was reckless." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but she is bluffing. She does not know what we found." Adrian shot him a look. "Be careful." People like her bite when cornered, before he could reply. Elena winced, her hand flying to her stomach. Ethan turned instantly. "Elena, Her face drained of color. "It is the baby. Something is wrong." Ethan was at her side in seconds, supporting her as she gasped. Panic filled the mansion. "Call the doctor," he barked. Marcus came running. "The ambulance is 5 minutes out." Elena collapsed against Ethan, her body trembling. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Do not let me lose this baby." Ethan held her tighter. "You will not. I will not let you." Rain poured as thunder cracked above. Ethan rode in the back, refusing to leave her side. Her eyes fluttered, her skin cold. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into emergency care. Ethan paced the hall, his clothes soaked and stained with blood. Adrian arrived minutes later. "She is strong," Adrian said quietly. "But you need to prepare for anything. I cannot lose her," Ethan whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "Not after everything." Hours crawled by. Finally, a nurse emerged. "The baby is stable. The mother is too, but she needs rest." Ethan exhaled, relief flooding through him. He slipped into the dim room and found her sleeping, some color returning to her cheeks. She held her stomach. He sat close, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You scared me," he whispered, "but you are safe now. Both of you." Her eyes fluttered open. "Ethan, I am here." Tears filled her eyes. "Did I lose them?" He shook his head, smiling. "No, you are both fighters." She tried to smile, exhaustion pulling her back under. "You should not care so much," she murmured. "Too late," he said, his voice cracking as she drifted off. Ethan watched the IV drip. His own blood type labeled clearly. The nurse's words echoed in his head. "You are a perfect match. That is rare." He stared at the bracelet on her wrist, the same crest engraved into his own ring. For the first time, Ethan wondered if fate had tied them together long before the gala by something deeper than blood. The rain finally stopped by morning. Sunlight spilled across the room, pale and quiet, touching everything with a fragile sense of peace. Elena slept, her breathing steady. Ethan watched the light move across her face. He had not slept, not since the night before, not since her voice begged him not to let go. A knock sounded at the door. Adrian entered holding a thick brown envelope with a red wax seal. The Hartwell crest was stamped deep into it. "It came by courier," he said, "from Father's lawyer, postmarked 2 years before he died." Ethan frowned. "He has been gone for over a decade." Adrian nodded. "Which means he planned this." He set it down. "It is for Elena Moore." Ethan stared at the name, unease growing. She should open it. "Not yet," Adrian said. "Read it first. Make sure it will not destroy her." Ethan hesitated, then broke the seal. The paper felt aged, the handwriting elegant and deliberate. He read aloud in a low voice. "My dearest Elena, if this letter finds you, the truth has reached you at last. I have carried this secret for 28 years, a secret born from guilt and love. Your mother, Isabella, was the only woman who ever made me doubt the life I built. When she became pregnant, I wanted to protect her, but my wife found out. She left, and I chose my empire over my heart. I thought hiding you would keep you safe. Instead, I condemned you to loneliness. You are my daughter in every way that matters. I could not acknowledge you, but I made sure you would never be left behind. One day, when the world turns against you, the Hartwell name will protect you, as it should have from the beginning. Forgive me, my child. Arthur Hartwell." Silence filled the room. Ethan lowered the letter slowly. His throat felt tight. Adrian exhaled. "So it is true. She is his daughter." Ethan shook his head. "No, the DNA test said otherwise." Adrian gestured toward the letter. "Maybe he falsified the adoption records. Maybe he wanted to cover the truth before Mother found out." Ethan's mind raced. "Then that means she is our half-sister," Adrian finished quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. For a moment, neither man spoke. The hum of hospital machines was the only sound. Finally, Ethan whispered, "She cannot know. Not yet. She is barely holding herself together." Adrian nodded. Agreed. But secrets have a habit of surfacing. If this reaches the wrong hands, the door creaked, and both turned sharply. Elena stood there, pale but awake, her hand clutching the frame, if what reaches the wrong hands. Ethan froze. Elena. Her eyes darted to the letter on the table, her name written in familiar ink. That is my mother's handwriting. No, Ethan said quickly, stepping between her and the envelope. You need rest. You are not ready. She pushed past him, snatching the letter. Her hands trembled as she read. Her lips parted, a broken whisper. He was my father. Ethan reached for her, but she stumbled back, shaking her head. All this time, everyone lied to me. Even you, Ethan. I did not know, Ethan said softly. Not until this morning. Tears streamed down her face. Then why do I feel like I just lost everything again? She turned away, pressing the letter to her chest. I do not belong anywhere. Not to him, not to you, not to anyone. Ethan took a step forward, his voice raw. You belong here with people who will not let your past define you. She looked up, eyes glistening. Then tell me one thing, Ethan, if I am his daughter, what does that make us? Ethan's breath caught. The question hung between them like thunder. The next week brought no peace. The letter's truth spread like wildfire, whispered by staff, debated by lawyers, feared by every Hartwell brother. The news was not public yet, but it was coming. Adrian ordered silence. Marcus worked on legal containment. Ethan avoided eye contact with everyone, especially Elena. She stayed mostly in her room, the letter folded neatly beside her hospital bracelet. Sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, kind, secretive, forever fading. My father was a man who hid me from his world. By morning, a knock shattered her day. Ethan entered, holding a newspaper. It is out, he said grimly. The headline screamed across the front page, hidden heir to the Hartwell empire. Beneath it, a photo of Elena leaving the hospital. With Ethan at her side, her stomach dropped. Who leaked it? It does not matter now, Ethan said. What matters is how we respond. Adrian is calling a press conference this afternoon. He wants to control the story before Langston twists it again. She nodded weakly, hands shaking. Do I have to go? You are at the center of it, Elena. You do not have a choice that afternoon. The Hartwell family stood before a wall of cameras. Reporters shouted questions, voices overlapping like gunfire. Adrian's expression was carved from stone. Yes, he announced, Arthur Hartwell legally adopted a child in secret. Her name is Elena Moore. We will respect his wishes. She is family. The crowd roared with more questions. Is she the child of his mistress? Was your mother aware? Will she inherit? Ethan stood silently beside Elena, a steady presence amid the chaos. But then, through the shouting, a new voice cut through. Venomous and unmistakable, Vanessa stepped from the crowd, microphone in hand, her face painted with mock sympathy. Tell us, Mr. Hartwell, she called to Adrian, if she is family. Does that mean your youngest brother fell in love with his own sister? Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras pivoted. Reporters shouted her question again and again. Ethan froze, his chest tightening as the implications spread. Elena's eyes widened, horror flooding her features. Oh, God. Adrian raised his hand for silence, fury flashing behind his calm. That is enough. But Vanessa was not done. I have proof, she said, pulling out her phone. Messages, photos. I can show you just how close they have become. Before she could continue, Marcus appeared beside her, snatching the phone. You just admitted to hacking a private device, he said sharply. That is a felony. Security surrounded Vanessa instantly. Her smile vanished, replaced with panic. Ethan stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. You think you can destroy us with gossip. You tried before, and you failed. But this time, the truth is on our side. The cameras flashed as security dragged Vanessa away, shouting curses. Hours later, silence returned to the mansion. Adrian poured a drink, staring at the fire. The damage is done. Even with the truth, the world sees scandal. Elena stood nearby, her face pale but resolute. Then let them, she said quietly. I have been called worse than someone's mistake. Ethan turned toward her. You are not a mistake. She looked up, tears shimmering. Then what am I? He hesitated, then stepped closer. You are the only person in this house who did not ask for power, and that is what makes you different. She exhaled shakily, resting a hand on her belly. I do not care about their empire, Ethan. I just want peace. He nodded slowly. Then we fight for that together. But neither noticed the message lighting up Ethan's phone. An encrypted email from an unknown sender. Next time it will not be words. Watch her carefully, Eel. The mansion had gone eerily quiet after the press conference. Cameras had finally disappeared from the gates. But tension still clung to the air like smoke. Elena sat by the fireplace, clutching a cup of tea she had not touched. The flames danced, casting faint light on her face. She was not thinking about the inheritance, only the weight of what she had learned. A father she never knew, a name that did not feel like hers, and a love she was told she could not have, outside. The sound of tires on gravel broke the silence. Marcus entered, his expression dark. We have got something, he said, and it is worse than we thought. Ethan looked up from his phone. What now? Marcus set a folder on the table. Vanessa is not just working with Eric. She is related to him. Elena blinked. What do you mean related? They share the same mother. Marcus said flatly. Half-siblings born 2 years apart. Ethan frowned. That cannot be right. It is right, Marcus replied. I confirmed it through birth records and hospital archives. Same mother, Lorraine Cole. She used 2 different names, one for her marriage to Eric's father and another when she gave birth to Vanessa. She hid it to avoid scandal. Adrian entered mid-conversation, his voice steady but cold, which means Eric Langston and Vanessa Cole are lovers and blood relatives. Elena gasped, hands trembling. This is illegal. Adrian snapped back. If this leaks, it destroys our reputations and burns Langston Holdings to the ground. Ethan stood firm. Then we release it. Adrian shook his head. Not yet. A scandal that big destroys everyone, including us. Elena set her cup down, shaking. You think they stop here? Vanessa humiliated me. Eric tried to ruin me. They won't quit until I'm gone. Ethan moved closer, voice steady but fierce. We stay ahead of them. You're not alone, Marcus interrupted. There is more, he said, opening a folder of photos. Vanessa met a man in a suit, handing over a thick envelope. That is their accountant. She paid him to cook the books. Eric hid millions in offshore charity accounts. Adrian clenched his jaw. Perfect. The same charities they use to claim they are the good guys. Ethan nodded grimly. We use this legally. It will end them. Elena stared at the photos, stomach churning. I don't want revenge, she whispered. I just want my life back. Adrian softened. Then you need justice, not revenge. Sometimes they look exactly the same. He left. The fire popped, loud in the silence. Ethan turned to her. This changes everything. Once the truth drops, Eric and Vanessa are finished. She looked up, eyes wet. And what happens to me? He hesitated. You start over with your child and a clean name. She held his gaze. And you? He smiled, but his eyes looked heavy. I will be right where you need me, always. Before she could answer, Marcus's phone buzzed. He frowned, reading a message aloud. Breaking news. Vanessa Cole's private jet is missing near Bermuda. No contact for 6 hours. Elena froze. Missing, Ethan and Marcus exchanged worried looks. Far away, thunder rumbled. None of them knew if Vanessa was dead or if she was coming back with enough vengeance to destroy them all. The morning news broke like thunder across New York. Every channel ran the same headline. Langston Holdings is under federal investigation. Elena watched from the living room as reporters swarmed the glass tower she once called home. Eric was shoved into a car in handcuffs. His composure was shattered. Eric Langston faced charges for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The anchor-s voice echoed. She couldn't look away. The man who promised her the world now stared at the pavement, blinded by camera flashes. Ethan muted the TV. It is over, he said. Elena shook her head. No, Vanessa is still out there. Marcus walked in, carrying reports. The Coast Guard found debris near Bermuda. It matches Vanessa's flight path. No bodies were found. She could still be alive, Ethan said grimly. Adrian joined them, pouring coffee into a glass. Alive or not, she is finished. The investigation links her to Eric's shell companies. If she shows up, she gets arrested. Elena leaned back, exhausted. It feels wrong, she murmured. I thought I would feel free when they fell, but I just feel empty. Ethan looked at her gently. That is the price of being the only one fighting for the truth. She smiled, though her eyes glistened. Do people ever really change, Ethan? Or do they just get better at pretending? He hesitated. Some change. Others just run out of lies. Marcus broke the silence. There is one more thing. Agents found a letter in Eric's office safe. It is for you, Elena. He handed her an envelope. It was Eric's handwriting, firm yet shaky. With trembling fingers she opened it. Elena, if you are reading this, everything is gone. I don't expect forgiveness. I never deserved it. Vanessa convinced me I was untouchable. I let her manipulate me into hurting you. She threatened to expose my company as debt. I was too proud to admit I was failing. You were the only real thing in my life. When you told me you were pregnant, I was terrified. Not of the baby, but of being exposed as a fraud. I am sorry. I hope you find a better life, Eric. Elena folded the letter, throat tight. He was a coward, she whispered, but at least he knew it. Ethan reached for her hand. Closure doesn't erase scars, but it lets them heal, she nodded, tears falling. Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and froze. You need to see this. He turned the screen toward them. An anonymous video was trending. Vanessa Cole is alive and promising revenge. The footage played. Vanessa looked disheveled but dangerous, sitting in a dark room. Her voice dripped with venom. You thought you could bury me. She sneered. But I don't die that easily. The Hartwells took everything from me. Now I will take everything from them. The video ended. Silence followed. Elena's heart raced. She is coming back. Ethan's jaw tightened, eyes turning to steel. Then we will be ready. This time, she is not facing the woman she tried to break. She is facing the Hartwell blood she never understood. Outside the estate, the world spun with gossip and speculation. But inside, time felt different. Slower, heavier. The investigation and the betrayal had left invisible scars. Yet another wound pulsed beneath the surface. The tension between Ethan and Elena. She avoided him for days, hiding in the quiet corners of the mansion. Every time she felt his gaze, her chest ached with confusion. The letter had shattered the life she knew. His daughter. Those two words felt like a curse. One evening, she wandered into the garden, where he had once told her she wasn't alone. The fountain trickled in the moonlight. She pressed a hand to her belly, whispering to her unborn child. You are all I have now, she said softly. You have more than you think. She turned. Ethan stood by the path, his shirt glowing in the light. His tone was calm, but his eyes held deep turmoil. Elena, he said, stepping closer, we need to talk. She shook her head. There is nothing left to say. There is everything to say, he countered. You have been avoiding me. I get it. But you are not alone in this. Her voice trembled. How can you look at me the same way? If it is true, if I really am his daughter. You are not, he said firmly. The DNA results were clear. You are not blood. Even if you were, he paused, lowering his voice, does love just switch off because of a paper? Her breath caught. Ethan, don't. I can't pretend anymore, he said, stepping closer, when I saw you bleeding, terrified and humiliated that night. Something in me changed. I didn't protect you just because you were family. I protected you because he stopped. Eyes glistening. Because I loved you? Elena's throat tightened. You cannot say that. You cannot. Why? He asked, voice breaking. Because the world says it is wrong. Because people will gossip. Let them. They don't know what we have been through. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't understand. I have lost everything once. I cannot lose this, too. You won't, he promised, tone soft and certain, not while I am here. For a moment the air felt electric. she whispered to herself. If the letter were true, if I were his child, what would that make us? Ethan's jaw tightened. It would make us two people punished for someone else's sins. He reached for her hands, giving her a chance to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers brushed, then interlocked. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like the walls were closing in. She felt warmth, steadiness. "And safety, Ethan," she whispered, tears streaming down. "I don't know what is right anymore." He smiled faintly, wiping her tears with his thumb. "Then let's stop worrying about what's right and start doing what feels true." The wind stirred the roses around them. The moment felt fragile and forbidden. But as their hands tightened, a shadow moved behind the hedges. A figure with a camera captured every second of the moment that could destroy them both. By morning, the world was loud again. Elena woke to her phone buzzing. Dozens of missed calls and hundreds of messages. Her name was everywhere. A new scandal broke, secret affair between heir and illegitimate daughter. Her chest tightened. She didn't have to scroll far to see the photo. A stolen image of her and Ethan in the moonlight garden. Their hands were held, faces close, eyes locked. The headline screamed betrayal. Her stomach twisted. No, this cannot be happening. Ethan burst through the door seconds later, face pale but composed. "You have seen it," he said quietly. She shoved the phone at him. "How did they get this? Who took it?" He jaw tightened. "Probably someone on our staff. Adrian is already digging into it." Elena collapsed onto the bed, shivering. "They are attacking me again. Worse than before. They are claiming I seduced you. That I planned this entire thing just to infiltrate the Hartwell family." Ethan dropped to his knees before her. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong." "I did," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I foolishly believed we could have something normal. Now they are going to tear us both to pieces." Before he could speak, Adrian walked in, phone to his ear. His voice was sharp. "I do not care about their offers. We say nothing until I give the word. Understand?" He hung up and looked at them. "It is everywhere. The board demands answers. Mother is threatening a press conference." Ethan stood up slowly. "Let her. I am done hiding." Adrian warned him. "Think about the consequences. If you admit to this, the company loses millions. Investors will panic. Mother will disown you both." Ethan's voice grew cold. "And if we lie, what happens to her? She remains the villain. I will not allow it." Adrian rubbed his temples. "You are playing with fire. The world does not forgive this kind of scandal." Ethan turned to Elena, his gaze steady. "Then let it all burn down." Hours later, they stood together at the press conference. Reporters screamed questions the moment they appeared. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning. "Mr. Hartwell, are you romantically involved with the woman claiming to be your father's secret daughter?" Ethan's voice cut through the noise. "The rumors about Elena are lies. She is not my blood. DNA tests proved that weeks ago." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Another reporter shouted, "Then what is she to you?" Ethan hesitated, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. "She is the woman I love." Total chaos erupted. Flashes blinded them. Questions flew like bullets. "When did it start? Does your mother approve? Is she pregnant?" Adrian stepped forward, blocking the swarm. "That is enough. This conference is over." They rushed backstage, security surrounding them. Elena's heart hammered. "You did not have to do that," she breathed. "Yes, I did," Ethan replied. "I am tired of the world deciding who you are." Before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. Eleanor Hartwell stood in the doorway, her face a mask of rage and heartbreak. "You have destroyed everything your father built," she whispered, eyeing her. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "No, Mother. I am saving what is left of it." Eleanor's lips trembled as she glared at Elena. "You have cursed this family. You will regret the day you ever entered our lives." Elena felt the words cut deep, but Ethan grabbed her hand and held it tight. "Then we will face the curse together. he said firmly, unaware that a black car was parked outside. Vanessa Cole sat inside, watching the live feed on her phone, whispering, "Perfect. Let us destroy them properly this time." 2 weeks passed. The world still whispered. But the tone shifted. What started as humiliations turned into fascination and finally into respect. The press stopped calling her an illegitimate daughter and started calling her a survivor. Elena stopped hiding. She was tired of being defined by the sins of others. The Hartwell estate, once a house of lawyers and shouting, had gone quiet. In the center of that calm, Elena sat at her laptop, sketching again. Her designs filled the screen. Soft lines, warm colors, a project she had poured her heart into. On the folder cover she had written 2 words, Eterna Studio. Ethan entered silently, watching her work. "You have been at that for hours," he said. She smiled faintly. "It feels good to create something of my own. Not his, not theirs, just mine." He nodded in support. "You are building something powerful. Not power," she corrected softly. "Purpose." The next day she stood before the old, abandoned Langston building. The nameplate was half off the wall. Reporters gathered again, but she did not hide. She wore a simple white dress and spoke calmly into the microphones. "I spent years trapped in someone else's story," she said. "Today, I begin my own. Eterna Studio will be a sanctuary for women rebuilding after loss. A place where every mistake becomes a new beginning." The crowd listened in total silence. Cameras flashed, not with mockery, but with admiration. Her words struck a chord that money could not buy. By evening, the clip had gone viral. People shared her speech under a new hashtag, Eternal Rises, at the Hartwell Mansion. Adrian watched the news with quiet pride. "She is good," he murmured, "better than any of us at controlling the narrative." Eleanor, standing nearby, said nothing, but her expression softened just a fraction. "She speaks like him," she whispered, thinking of her late husband. "Arthur would have liked her." Ethan smiled faintly. Then maybe he finally got something right. Later that night, a gala was held for new philanthropic ventures. Elena attended. Her first public appearance as both a Hartwell and an independent businesswoman. The ballroom shimmered again, but this time she stood tall. No fear, no trembling hands, no shame. When Ethan approached, the music slowed. "You know," he said, "it is poetic. The last time we were at a gala, you were falling apart. Tonight, you are the one holding everything together." She laughed softly. "Maybe you were right. Sometimes we have to burn to rise." "You did more than rise," he said. "You changed the story." Across the room, Adrian raised a glass to them. Even Eleanor nodded once, a quiet acknowledgment that spoke louder than words. Throughout the night, reporters gathered, but this time, nobody shouted her down. Instead, people wanted to learn about her foundation and her strength. But amidst the celebration, a man in a dark suit slipped through the crowd and slid a small envelope into Ethan's hand. "From an anonymous sender," he said before disappearing. Ethan frowned and opened it. Inside was a single, blurry, but unmistakable photo. Vanessa Cole, alive, standing on a dock in the tropics, boarding a yacht. On the back, a note. "You celebrated too soon." He froze. Elena noticed his mood shift. "What is it?" He forced a calm smile. "Nothing to ruin your night, just business." But as the lights sparkled around them and applause echoed, Ethan's fingers tightened around the photograph. Far away, under the same moon, Vanessa raised a glass of champagne on the deck and whispered into the wind, "Let the queen enjoy her crown before I snatch it off her head." The next morning brought a strange peace. The chaos of headlines had faded, replaced by genuine admiration. Eterna Studio had launched, and Elena S.'s message, "Every wound can become," art was spreading faster than any scandal. The world finally saw her as a woman reborn. Ethan watched her from his office window, pride softening his steel composure. She stood outside the studio, surrounded by women who had once been broken, now helping others rebuild. For the first time, he thought, this is what strength looks like. Then his phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. "You cannot erase me. See you tonight. V." His chest tightened. Vanessa. That evening, the Hartwell mansion hosted a private charity dinner. Elegant, intimate, and packed with partners and press. It was supposed to mark a new chapter for the family and the studio. Elena had no idea Vanessa was alive. Ethan planned to keep it that way for at least a few more hours. She arrived in a silver gown, radiant beneath the chandeliers. As she entered, the room seemed to pause. Conversations hushed. Even the cameras felt slower, reverent. Ethan walked toward her, every step deliberate, as if the world existed just to witness what would happen next. "You look." He stopped, smiling. Faintly, there is no word good enough. She laughed softly, brushing hair behind her ear. "You should save the charm for the reporters." "Tonight," he said, his voice dropping, "is not about them." Dinner passed in a blur of music and toasts. When the lights dimmed and the violinists began to play, Ethan stood, tapping his glass. "There is something I need to say to all of you, but mostly to one person." He turned to Elena, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. "You walked into my world when everything was collapsing. You had every reason to hate everyone in this room, but you chose grace instead. You rebuilt not just your life, but the meaning of our name." Her breath hitched as he knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Gasps echoed through the room. "Elena Hartwell," he said, opening it to reveal a simple diamond ring. "I do not care what the world calls us, scandal, mistake, miracle to me. You are the truth. I was too blind to see it. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan." She could not finish. She did not have to. The answer shone in her smile as she nodded through her tears. Applause filled the hall. Cameras flashed. For a moment, everything was perfect until the lights flickered. A single image appeared on the large projector screen behind them. Vanessa Cole standing on a yacht, her eyes cold and alive. The crowd gasped as her recorded voice boomed through the speakers. "Congratulations, Hartwells. Think I would vanish so easily. Enjoy the fairy tale. The next chapter is mine." Silence hit the room. Adrian barked orders to cut the feed. But it was too late. The damage was done. Reporters scrambled, snapping photos and whispering rumors. Elena froze, her engagement ring shaking in her hand. "She is alive." Ethan whispered. "Yes, and she is making her move." Adrian turned, snapping. "Security will track her. She will not get close again." But Ethan knew better. Vanessa never attacked from the outside. She planted poison within. He held Elena's hand, eyes locked on hers. "I do not care what she tries. This time, we fight together." Outside the mansion, a black car idled under the streetlights. Inside, Vanessa smiled at the ring on her finger, a twin to Elena's, and whispered, "Let us see how much love survives this war." Days blurred into chaos. Vanessa's return exploded across the news, turning the celebration into a massive scandal. Commentators guessed her next move. Tabloids printed wild theories while social media fed on the drama. Inside the Hartwell mansion, things were deadly calm. Too calm. Ethan paced the office, his phone vibrating. Adrian was on the line with federal agents, while Marcus traced digital footprints from the video. Every lead vanished like smoke. Vanessa was a ghost again. "She is not hiding," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "She is waiting." Elena entered quietly. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights, but her voice stayed steady. "Then we stop waiting. We end this now." Adrian turned to her. "You mean yes," she said firmly. "She wants attention. We give it to her my way." That evening, Elena posted a video across every platform. No publicist, no script, just her and the camera. "My name is Elena Moore Hartwell. I spent months living through lies and betrayal, but I refuse to be a victim. Vanessa Cole. You want the world to hear your story. Fine. Let us end this face-to-face. Tomorrow night, Hartwell Hall. No cameras, no security, just truth." Minutes later, the internet exploded. The final confrontation trended worldwide. Critics called it reckless. Supporters called it brave. Vanessa responded 3 hours later with a single post. See you there. The next night, rain poured like it always did before a storm. The grand hall was silent, save for the ticking clock. Ethan stayed hidden in the shadows, despite Elena's wish to face Vanessa alone. He would not let her risk it all. At 9 sharp, the doors creaked open. Vanessa entered, elegant, pale, and dangerous. "You always did know how to put on a show," she said. Elena faced her, calm and steady. "This is not a show. This is closure." Vanessa laughed softly. "Closure. You stole everything. The company, the man." "The name. I stole nothing," Elena interrupted. "You destroyed yourself trying to own what was never yours." Vanessa's smile vanished, and him. She pointed toward the shadows where Ethan hid. "Do you think he loves you, or do you think he just pities you?" Ethan stepped out, voice sharp. "You do not get to talk about love, Vanessa. You used it like a weapon." Vanessa's mask cracked. "You think you are better. We are the same. Both of us clawing for scraps from men who play gods." Elena took a breath. "Maybe I was like you once, angry and broken, but I learned something you never did. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is freedom." Vanessa faltered for a second. Her eyes glistened, but the hardness returned. "You think the world forgives you. They will never forget what you are." Elena smiled sadly. "Then let them remember. They will remember me standing tall." Vanessa's lips parted, but before she could speak, Adrian entered with federal agents. "Vanessa Cole," he announced, "you are under arrest for fraud, blackmail, and extortion." Her eyes widened. "You set me up," Ethan said quietly. "No. You set yourself up when you sent that video through stolen corporate accounts. Every trail led back to you." The agents moved in, cuffing her as she screamed. "You think this is the end. You will never be clean." Elena turned away as they dragged her out. The rain drowned her fading voice. Ethan approached, wrapping his arms around her shaking shoulders. "It is over," he whispered. She looked up, tears of relief in her eyes. "No," she said softly, "it is finally beginning." Months later, sunlight bathed the estate as laughter replaced the scandal. The studio flourished, helping women like Elena rebuild. On its anniversary, Ethan stood beside her with their child, the ring gleaming in the light. Reporters asked for one final quote. Elena smiled at the cameras. "They called it a scandal," she said gently. "I call it survival, somewhere behind bars." Vanessa watched the interview with a cold smile, whispering, "Let her have her peace for now. That is how the story ends. But you are still here, right? If you stayed until this moment. Maybe Elena's journey touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of a time you had to rise after life knocked you down. This story was not just about wealth or scandal. It was about resilience finding light after the darkest storms. The Stoic said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That is what Elena learned. Pain is not the end. It is the start of transformation, as Marcus Aurelius wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. In the end, forgiveness was her freedom. We must remember, no matter how broken things seem, healing starts the moment we choose peace over revenge. If this story stirred something in you, do not keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe. We do not just tell stories, we help you feel.